One of my favorite books is The Invisible Man by Ralph Ellison. And it's not about a literally invisible man, it's not about science fiction, but it kind of has an unreality about it. It's set in 1945, and there's a person of color who's coming from the South to the North to work for what he thinks is going to be greater opportunity, what he has been assured is greater opportunity. But all along the way, increasingly, starting with the people who were providing his education or funding his education in the South, and then intensifying as he goes into the urban North, there's this massive psychologically dysfunctional projection that he gets mainly from white people anywhere he goes. It's like everyone around him perceives him as some kind of a threat, almost as like an instinctive thing, almost as like an animal reaction. They go into like a fugue state, like a dissociation, and they start to try to weave him into whatever story they're telling themselves about people of color. And I read this book in high school. I thought it was fascinating. I read it just last year or the year before. And as an adult, as a trans woman, oh my God, it's almost embarrassing how much it rings true. Because even if he's confronting people who seem to be on his side, people who seem to want to help him and help people like them, it's demeaning and debilitating and gaslighty what people do to like force a certain thing to happen when they're scared of someone. I get this feeling a lot. I get the feeling like no one wants to sit down and like have a nice civilized discussion over a cup of coffee or tea and actually get to know me as a person. Like everyone is so scared of what might happen if they like let me talk for a little while that they have to fill the air with words to prevent things from going out of control. Just now, I was at my favorite grocery store, and there was this woman who was like a Gen Xer or a boomer who was working the bakery, and she gave me that, "Can I help you?" sort of tone, right? Like she had already decided that I was a threat because I'm trans and maybe I'm the first trans person she's ever seen, or because I like to dress in black, like to dress nicely but a little edgy. Maybe she can't tell that from someone who's like disheveled and in a state of desperation. But I had just bought like a big sack of, $80 worth of groceries. And she was there like, oh, like trying to get away from me, trying to get me to leave. I've even toned it down a little bit. Like I got a new Lilith sigil necklace because my other one has a pentagram on it, and I know that freaks some people out. Like I thought we were kind of like over the satanic panic. I thought people realized that that's just people who are either abusing children or watching children get abused in their community by people like pastors who have a track record of abusing children, and they're projecting that onto an external group that they find threatening. I get this kind of like projective treatment from cis women in a lot of ways. It's by no means all cis women. It is disappointing because during my transition and after my transition, I found that there were a lot of cis women that I just couldn't be friends with. I was in a fabric store the other day, and I made a casual comment about how, the innovations that women come up with are often marginalized and seen as less worthy of, remuneration, I forget what that is, than anything that a cis man could come up with. And she was like, maybe kind of a lesbian aligned or like a feminist inclined person. She was so uncomfortable, like she started to get flustered. And I was like, wow, okay, so the people at this fabric store don't think I'm a woman. That's weird. I wish it wasn't like that, and I wish that all the TERFs hadn't moved from Santa Cruz to Berkeley like 50 years ago because there was a transgender sound engineer. So, like, yeah, if you're in the East Bay and you see a TERF, well, it's because that was like the seed of the community that was planted, was a bunch of people who are like mad with hate. And then, of course, there are the academically oriented feminists who are maybe not explicitly transphobic. But even then, there's this vein of intellectualization and deconstruction that I get from people who've come through that gender studies discipline. And they always start babbling at me like, oh, you can do whatever you want. Gender is just a performance. Whoa, yes, queen. And it just curdles my blood because they can't just be like, oh, wow, hello, interesting person. How do you experience gender? No, they need to tell me how I experience gender. And that actually like materially set back my transition by a number of years because I just couldn't get a person in my community to talk to about gender who wasn't going to, tell me that I'm ugly, talk about how I shouldn't seek surgery, I shouldn't seek hormone therapy, because, they're really like projecting their own discomfort with the feminine gender onto me. Because the only way that they've ever known womanhood is as an artificial thing that's being forced onto others. And it's so weird that these people take it seriously. It's like that study about like fat consumption that led to our whole broken low-fat system that just made everybody fatter, where in order to prove a thesis, the person just threw out all the data points that didn't fit his preconceived conclusions. It's really like bad scholarship. It's completely indefensible, but these people are they're not dispassionate investigators of the world, even though they write from that academic authoritative perspective. They're a bunch of ideologues with tons of closet issues in themselves who are vociferously trying to go out and create a safe space for them where they can figure out their gender, as so many women's studies scholars find that they're not women. Other cis women, they look at me as sort of an open target for sexual assault. They apparently I'm some kind of fantasy for some people. No, that's kind of flattering, but also like, they come up and they start groping me and touching me without asking. And I thought that we just went through the Me Too thing, like, and Me Too isn't just them, it's like all of us. It doesn't that, like they can't even process what the words Me Too mean. They have to confine it to themselves because the idea of a trans woman being targeted for sexual assault is just incomprehensible to them. I've had cis women pressure me into doing things that I didn't want to. I've had cis women come up and start kissing me and then been like in the weird position where I'm like gaslighting myself. Like, did I want that? Maybe I want to date this person. Oh no, like she's a consent violating creep and I don't want to be anywhere near her. I've also been sexually assaulted by trans women and by cross-dressers. And that, that really disappoints me because I have no idea where it comes from. Maybe it comes from like the promiscuous nature of like gay male culture, like maybe they're sexualized, socialized in gay culture or sissy culture, which have tons of problems. And they just assume that I'm sexually available based on the fact that I'm trans and kind of pretty and I wear kind of tight clothing sometimes. But as we like to say, cosplay is not consent. That doesn't mean that I'm a toy to be played with. I should be treated like a person. I've seen in kind of a business environment when I'm out in my corporate goth, my like nice white shirt and black vest and black pants or black skirt. I've had people make eye contact with me and just barely be able to contain the fear and the shock that they have about me being there. And, that's not very professional. With men in general, with gay men, with straight men, with bi men, it's far more fraught. The people who give me the fewest problems are the ones who are just kind of naive bros, the ones who are just like, hey, honey, looking good, work it, Like, that scares the shit out of a lot of cis women. It doesn't frighten me at all, because I know that they're not going to touch me. Yes, if I was in a situation with them and, something was going to go down, then it would be far more dangerous than if I was there with an assigned female at birth person, typically. But, I'm pretty good at threat assessment. I go out to nightclubs a lot. And I think I know when somebody has, violence in their heart versus when somebody just, they're a bit of a lout and they see something that's attractive and they make a noise. Then there are the ones, and this is typically a gay guy, who come up to me and they seem interested, but they start using all sorts of language. They start going, oh, yeah, man, yeah, dude, yeah, guy, bro, something like that. And I'm like, don't call me a man, I'm a woman, can't you see? And then they get all defensive and they're like, oh, well, that's a gender neutral term and blah, blah, blah. And I'm like, I think what's actually happening here is that you can't believe that I'm a girl. And so in order to keep those gay thoughts at bay, regardless of the valence of the gayness, they have to try and keep that contained within themselves by forcibly gendering me as something other than what I am. I think by far the most annoying type of person for me to deal with is someone who, well, let's just say they come from a socially conservative culture and they're quite well-to-do. They have money, and they just treat me like a guy. They just, are like, hey, dude, or something like that. Like, hey, what is that guy doing? And I just can't believe that, because it's like they can't even see. It's like they're literally blind, like I'm invisible. And maybe, in a sense, they are blind. Okay, the types of people who succeed in our culture, this horrible, dehumanizing, category-based capitalist culture, are the ones who think the most categorically. The people who are the best at, listening to an authority figure, reading a book, and reliably regurgitating that information back to their professor. In this culture of ours, in this capitalist neurotypical culture that we have, those are the kinds of people who make it far. They listen, they follow orders, and they don't ask too many questions. And unfortunately for these people's economic interests, I think they're the people who are the easiest to replace with AIs, because they're basically just doing training and then output in a very constrained circumstance, which is a perfect problem for an LLM to solve. Overall, the people who treat me best are the downtrodden. And in case you can't hear the components that go into that word, the people that were stepped on in the mud in order to support this brutal capitalist hellscape. Regardless of all of the other problems that punks and goths and people who are marginalized have, in order to survive when you're downtrodden, you have to develop your animal instincts. You have to develop your person-to-person relationship skills. You have to develop the ability to look at somebody and be like, okay, it's safe. There's plenty of people around me. This person looks like they're just down on their luck. Okay, I'm going to help them out a little bit, or I'm going to ask them what's up. Versus oh, that person is pacing around me like a predator, like they're about to bite. And as someone who's had self-defense training, I know that very well. But, overall, I think even though this is kind of a dark moment, this is a pride where there's violence happening right now against the people of this country from a government, I have so much hope for us. I have so much hope for all the people who are already grown up and out. And I have so much hope for the young people who are like shit posting on the internet and learning Gen Alpha slang and talking about vibes because they're really with it. They can't be fooled. Yes, it's possible that this is the beginning of the Republic of Gilead, that we're going to just go through the Handmaid's Tale, and I'm going to be sent off to a concentration camp in El Salvador. But it's also possible that this is our Bastille moment. It's also possible that this is where people really start to change, because the measures that the powers that be are trying to put into place to continue the system that they thrive in are getting more and more strict. They're working less and less. You know, we've got like entire nations full of people who can't breed to replacement level because there's no place for love in their culture. And then like some of them are taking the tack that the right response to that is to make people work harder or to provide a financial incentive. In order for a system to survive, you know, like the people who uphold the system, the people who go around in that fucking riot gear and shit, they have to have a livelihood too. And their livelihood is shrinking. The number of people who are supported by the current system is shrinking. And the more people who are among the downtrodden, the more people have to learn the complexity of life and how to live with people like a person, then the closer paradise is for all of us, I think. So, happy Pride.